Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my channel, The Courageous Walk. I am John L. Reynolds, and today I want to talk to you about being grateful and reclaiming your joy. So, why is this a topic that is on my mind this week and today? I was really reflecting over the course of the week on Jacob Blake, many of the Black lives that were snatched from us, whether it was unjust killings or those that we highly respect and hold dear to our hearts. For example, Chadwick Boseman, who is a role model for so many Black kids, especially our young boys. And, when I heard the news, I first thought, this has got to be a hoax. So I did some investigations and found out that it was true and that he had been fighting cancer for 4 years, and it wasn't really the topic. In fact, most people did not know. And it really made me pause and think about, what's happening in our world right now. The fact that so many have died from COVID-19, people that I know, so many have been affected, and there's a lot of uncertainty in our world. And it's very easy for us to stay in a space of helplessness, hopelessness, anger, pain, hurt, all of these emotions, which are valid. Absolutely. Some of us may be facing more on the mental health side in terms of depression and anxiety, especially for those who have to return to school or to work. And there's a fear of, will I get COVID-19 or any of the other things that come with that. And, as I thought about my own life in this context of what next, I really started to focus on all of those times where I felt helpless, where I felt like there was not an end in sight, or like a remedy would not come soon enough. And, the more that I thought about those situations, I realized, 20 years later, 10 years later, 5 years later, 2 years later, 3 years later, I am in a completely different space. But in the moment, I honestly felt like there was no end in sight. And I believe that with every fiber in my body, which played a part in, the mental health issues that may have arisen. And the focusing on, well, what did I do? What happened in those situations that helped me to overcome? As I started to think about that process, I felt my mood lift. I started to feel better. And I realized that so many times, all of us at some point in our life, we have done this, where we wallow or we focus on the negative. Some people are just naturally pessimistic. Some choose to be pessimistic. Some people who are pessimistic are also consider themselves realistic. So all of those types of things keep us in a very negative space. And whenever I choose to be grateful, whenever I choose to reflect on my own life or the personal stories of others of how they have overcome, or of them just being grateful for the simple things. So, I remember before I started telecommuting for work, I would be so happy, particularly as a graduate student, because it was very difficult to find parking after 9 a.m. And so it was really a process of getting to campus and hoping for the best that there would be a parking spot for you that was within walking distance, meaning 10 to 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes from whichever building I was heading to. And the sense of joy and relief and happiness when I saw an empty spot, or I am one of those people who would sit in the parking lot in my car praying for a spot to open, and I will wait, I'll do my work or whatever, wait the extra 10 to 15 minutes for a spot to open. And there was just something about something as small as a parking spot that lots of us take for granted. Or, getting your favorite cup of coffee. For me, I'm in love with hot chocolate. So, when you order hot chocolate from different places and The little things of how they decorate the cup and the different flavors, those are small things that we take for granted. Other people, it's simply taking some time to look out the window and observe what's happening. Other people, it might be just going for a simple walk and breathing in the fresh air. Others of us, you might need something grander to start to get your attention. Maybe it's a promotion at work, it's an upgrade on your car, or it could just simply be there was something that you were hoping to get done as a project in your home. And, for months, for years, you wanted some changes made, and whether it was financial situation or the manpower, or anyone, right? Someone to help you make it happen. Those are things that you had in the back of your mind, like a wish. And then when it does happen, you feel like overwhelmed with this positivity. And for me, I have always learned that there was a difference between happiness and joy. So happiness is this sort of temporary feeling that comes and goes, right? So in one moment, you could be really happy because you got great news, and then something else could come along and the happiness would flee almost. And my understanding of what I have been trained about joy, more of from a spiritual context, is that joy is sort of like long lasting. It's something much deeper. It has more to do with your belief system. And it's why even in the midst of crisis, in the midst of loss, in the midst of pain, you can still have joy deep on the inside, even if your circumstances are not happy per se. And so, with all of those things going through my head, going through my mind over the course of the last few days, and thinking, well, what should I talk about this week? I thought maybe gratitude. So what does it mean to be grateful, thankful? It's just this idea of showing appreciation for whatever, right? Appreciation for small things to big things. I think that many of us struggle with this because I don't think we are quite socialized in this world to be grateful, to celebrate others, to celebrate ourselves, to pause long enough to reflect on our life. And we have to be more intentional. So there are a few things that I would like us to sort of think about this week to help us be more grateful and thus reclaiming our joy. So first, I want you to think about areas in your life, right? We're focusing on the big things for now. What are the areas in your life where you have gone through difficulty and you've come out on the other side? You have overcome. Good things have come after the negativity, whatever that was. So it could be the loss of a job, the loss of a loved one, anything like that. Heartbreak. Let's see, what else did I have on my list? Sickness, some form of rejection, whether from a job or a partner, any of those big things that really do a number on our hearts. And, for some of us, on our belief systems. And I want you to get a journal that I would call a gratitude journal and make a list of those big things. And then I want you to pick one and I want you to break it down. What were the things that happened that led to you being able to come out on the other side? That helped you to overcome, that helped you to get to this next phase in your journey? What happened? What was the timeline? What were the details? So you're not focusing on the negative aspects of the situation, but you're focusing on what helped you to overcome. Like, what was that process that got you to the other side? And you could do that for multiple ones, right? But this I'm hoping would be an ongoing journey for you. So you start with one big thing, and then of course, either you make a chart, right, with all the big things, and then that I call like life-changing events. in one column, and then in the second column, small things that we typically overlook. And then make a list of all the things that you're grateful for that get you happy, that you don't necessarily take the time to pause and appreciate. And each of us, we have, or the small things just vary. It really depends on your lived experiences and your personality and the things that you prioritize. Some people, it's just having, 20 minutes alone. That's something to be grateful for, particularly if you have kids and there's lots of people that are constantly in your space expecting a lot from you. So alone time means a lot. So make a list of all those things that really make you happy, that you are, when you experience it, you just feel a sense of relief. You just feel like some warmth. So that's your list. So after you're done identifying your life-changing events, and you break down the life-changing events in terms of parsing out what happened to get you to the other side. Then in your next column, you have all the small things, the things that you overlook on a regular basis that you're grateful for, but you don't take the time to pause and to be intentional about doing some of the things that you made note of. So for example, for myself, it would be when I wake up in the morning, one of the first things that I do is to verbalize out of my mouth what I am grateful for. So on some days, sometimes I struggle with sleeping restfully throughout the night. So there's some mornings when I wake up before my alarm and I feel refreshed and rested, then that's something that I'm grateful for to start the day. And so I will say, thank God that I woke up, right? That I'm alive. And two, that I slept throughout the night and I feel so refreshed. That's it. Just a few words. I just start the day off like that. And then secondly, I personally would send a message to my best friend as long as I have the time, as soon as I wake up, something silly, it's almost like an acknowledgement. I'm alive. Let's start the day. And of course, usually at that point, she's been awake for multiple hours. So being intentional, and then throughout the day, depending on the conversations that I'm having and the work that I'm doing, sometimes when I have worked through lunch and I have meetings upcoming and I have a small window, and I already have food cooked or something that I could pop into the microwave, I will express out loud my gratitude for the food being ready. And then I will text my best friend and, talk about the fact that I'm hungry. For some reason, I tell her all the time that I'm hungry. And, so it's the little things. There are other occasions, depending on the day and what's happening and people's stress levels that I'm interacting with, I will reflect on, things that we should all be grateful for in the context of work or whatever else. But for myself, it's always finding those small things to be grateful for and saying them out loud. I believe in the power of words, the spoken word. And there's just something about what it does. It sort of reshifts your focus, right? So be intentional about expressing out loud. I mean, obviously, if you're on a train or you're in public place, I don't necessarily want you to be shouting out loud what you're grateful for. If that's, if that makes sense for you, go right ahead. But for me, as long as it's out where I can hear my own voice saying it, it makes me like pause and pay attention to the words itself. Something I probably should be doing a lot more, like I'm asking all of you to do, is to have a gratitude journal where I make a list of all the things that I'm grateful for, whether it's my family, the fact that we are all healthy and safe, the fact that we have jobs, the fact that, we have ways and means to stay in contact, even though we haven't been able to see each other physically, well, since the beginning of the year. So it's also about reframing some of the negative experiences, because on one hand you could be really sad and focus on the fact that you haven't seen your family or friends, but the reframe is that you still have opportunity to stay connected to them even if you physically can't be in their presence. So there's something positive in the midst of the ideal that you would want that's not happening. So the other thing is so first, right, you're tracking your experiences with the life-changing events as well as the small things you typically overlook. Particularly with the life-changing events, you are documenting, that process of overcoming on the other side, focusing on the positives. And then you're being intentional about being grateful throughout the day, but you make sure, like, some of the first words out of your mouth when you wake up are words of gratitude, of thanksgiving, right? And you want to say it where you can hear it. And if you need to shout it, really loud for multiple people to hear it, I mean, most of us are at home anyway, so it probably won't affect anyone. But as long as you can hear it, and you do so throughout the day, be intentional about pausing and doing so. And then, it's not just about ourselves, right? We have to also express our gratitude to others. So when we're talking to people, whether we're at work or with our kids or with our family members or friends or strangers, we have to remember to show gratitude. There's lots of people who are going through life that have never heard, or so rarely have they heard, "Thank you. I really appreciated you. Thank you for da 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 da." When you sent me that emoji, or when you sent me that meme, or when you sent me that email, or when you smiled, you looked me in the eye and you smiled at me. This is how it made me feel. This is the impact that it had on me. And I know that you had no idea what was going on in my life because, one, we're strangers, or we haven't really had those types of conversations. Perhaps this is with a colleague or someone that you see regularly, but you don't really have conversations beyond the superficial. I was going to say supernatural, but superficial is actually what I mean. So somehow when you express gratitude and appreciation to other people for what they're doing in your life, it opens up the conversation. And something about what comes as a result of that, not only do you feel good when you see the other person's reaction, but there's so many people who are longing for someone to acknowledge them, longing for someone to acknowledge what they're doing. And there's so many of us that are fixers. There's so many of us that are going above and beyond to help other people, almost at the expense of ourselves, where we're going, taking care of everybody else. And oftentimes we neglect ourselves. And so just imagine what it would be like for so many of these people, for so many of us to hear, "Thank you. I appreciate the effort. I appreciate you taking the time. I appreciate you showing up. I appreciate you doing X, Y, Z." And so now you're, it's almost like you're building in a routine or a habit where gratitude is just going to be instinctive. It's just going to be something that you do, that you're grateful for the things that are happening in your life that benefit you, and is to some extent self-centered. And as I've said many times, as a Christian, it's also about being grateful in that connection with God. So it's a God and me thing, part of my own sort of well-being. And then being able to express it to other people sort of opens the door and the channel to have conversations, relationships, interactions that are more positive. And remember, because we don't always know what someone's going through, so it's up to us to be intentional, to be nice to others. And yes, there are quite a few people in this world that are annoying. that bring out the worst in you. That the sight of them sort of brings up all of these negative emotions. And we all have at least one person in our life that when we hear their names or when we see them or whatever, you just feel, you just immediately feel annoyed. And I think that, if you shift your focus to finding something that you could be grateful about where they are concerned, or just focusing on something positive about them, if you could bring yourself to do that, then at least it will help you with some of the negative responses that come up. So we talked about the importance. Let's see if I left anything out. Talked about starting the day. Oh, the other thing is, which is sort of connected to the people that annoy us. When we are focusing on being grateful and changing our mindset so that we are starting our days on a positive, a positive sort of attitude, and keeping ourselves in that space, even when we go off course, we come back. And of course, whenever we're trying to do anything that will benefit us and our well-being, there will always be people and circumstances that will arise to challenge that, to keep us stuck in old habits and old ways of being. And I think that's always going to happen, but what can you do? It's about reframing the situation. So if you find yourself, you were just interacting with that person that annoys you, and you're venting, or whatever it is that you're doing as a result of that annoying situation or circumstance, I want you to pause and reflect on the fact that you just spent 5, 10, 30, 60 minutes on that negative situation and getting yourself all worked up and releasing all sorts of hormones that are associated with negative experiences rather than the positive endorphins. And, think about what it's doing for your health. And a lot of the times, the person you just spent or the situation you just spent getting worked up on is just the person's going about their business while you just wasted a lot of time and energy. So if you find yourself about to go down that path, that situation, I would encourage you in that moment to think about something that makes you happy, something that makes you laugh, something that, brings you back into like this positive headspace, positive heart space, and focus on that. Talk about that. For some people, you might need to listen to some music that is very positive, that the lyrics are very encouraging, and that shifts your focus back on where it should be. So for me, that's gospel music, but specifically the lyrics. So not all gospel music, but specific songs that are there to keep me mentally on track. And so each of you will have to find that thing. For some people, it might be just doodling or, going through social media. Social media, you may or may not find positive things, right? And as you go through your feed, there'll be negative stuff and positive things. So you have to decide if social media is the place for you, if you're trying to reset your mindset after being pissed off, upset, angered. And but you have to figure out what that thing is and then have it in place. So, if someone has done that thing and they regularly do it, that you can easily, it doesn't mean that you don't take a moment to vent and so on, but if it's going beyond 15 minutes to 30 minutes to more, now you're losing time. So you can't be productive if you are spending that time grumbling. And then even if you're not grumbling out loud, your whole body is just reacting. So find that thing that will help to redirect your focus, to bring you back into that positive headspace. Finally, going full circle back to, the loss of life. so many Black lives in particular, I wanted to say that we should be intentional about sharing with others how we feel about them now when they're alive, rather than waiting until they die. So let's be intentional about expressing our feelings, our gratitude, all of that with the people around us when they're alive to hear it and to benefit from hearing those words rather than waiting until it's too late. So, on that note, thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, click on the notification button so that you don't miss any of my new videos. See you next time.